Quickly go and check the YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter for World Beyond War, as well as share them to other channels. And they should be up and running now. I'm going to let everybody in, and I'm going to get rid of the waiting room.
Thank you. I was just thinking, I don't actually have like a generic Stop the War one. Either like Joe Black.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, well, this is it. Only got this one.
Patrick, we're live.
Are we live?
We are going. Welcome, everyone.
Let me know when it's free. Oh, here we go.
are we in?
We're in. I think we started. Hello.
Hello, and welcome to London. We are kicking off the 24-hour round-the-clock international peace wave for Ukraine. My name is Shadi Edward-Sashdi. I'm a member of Stop the War Coalition.
And I am Padraig McCarrick with the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. And yeah, we're all very honoured to be kicking off the 24-hour peace wave today. I can't believe it's finally here, and I'm really excited to see what everybody around the world has to bring. I think it's going to be 24 hours of education and just of showcasing peace movement around the world, and it's a real privilege to be a part of that. What we'll do is, first of all, this event we're at today hasn't kicked off just yet. So what we're going to do is explain a little bit about why we're here today, and I'll give you a little flavour of what's going to be coming up over the next 2 hours or so during our block. Let's do a little review. Ooh, here we go. Here we go.
Behind us is the Ministry of Defence, and of course the reason why we are here today in central London is to lobby our British policy makers. So the Ministry of Defence, arguably quite part of an aggressive alliance worldwide, and the Ministry of Defence is really at the heart of that. So that's why we are protesting outside the Ministry of Defence. And if we twizzle around again,
twizzle, yeah, there we go.
Twizzle behind us, that's Downing Street, Boris Johnson's home, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, of course. So really, this is a fundamental, pivotal place to be to protest and kickstart the peace movement.
Yeah. So our No to NATO demo is right here, and then if we'll twizzle a little bit further. More twizzling. There. Oh, are we twizzling more?
We're twizzling more.
Oh, just where we go. Oh no, we twizzled too more. In the background, we'll go down and have a chat with them later. But there's some demonstrators from Sudan who are also having a protest. So we might go and see our friends down there a little bit later on. And then later in the back half of the second hour, we are going to hear some presentations and music from a wonderful selection of youth peace activists in Western Sahara. They will be telling us a little bit about the occupation by Morocco over there and their non-violent resistance against that occupation. Hello to Yuri, who's just commented in the chat there. Hello, welcome. And I think someone also said they were saying hello from Nigeria.
Hello.
So hello, Nigeria. Thanks for joining in on the stream today. Also, before we get started, I would like to say thank you to Dave at World Beyond War and all the lads, Sean and Reiner and Theo, who have been organising from the International Peace Bureau, and Divine too. Who could forget Divine? So thank you everybody for including us. Nick Martin, thank you, from the Ukrainian pacifist movement. Always fantastic to have the Ukrainian pacifist movement knocking in and saying hello. Welcome, welcome. And if you'd like to get active in the chat, Tim in Spain, hello. I don't know if that's my friend Tim Puda, maybe. Welcome. If you want to get active in the chat, tell us where you're from. Send us a little message. that would be great, just so we know that we're not all broadcasting to dead air.
Also, because we're talking about Spain, Tim in Spain, obviously this week coincides with the NATO summit in Madrid. So that's really important why we're here today on that day. So any comments from Spain would be really welcomed and appreciated, particularly. Obviously, we are saying no to NATO. NATO calls itself a defence alliance. We would obviously argue it's a war alliance. And actually has been pivotal in not just escalating this crisis in Ukraine, but many in the last few decades, 1999, all the way through to now. We've just dropped a pen. We can pick that up. We'll pick it up. But yeah, NATO has been really devastating in many issues, from Yugoslavia to Afghanistan, Libya, you name it. NATO has really escalated the crisis and made the world a more dangerous place, if definitely not safer. So today, really important that we're here to say no to NATO, especially ahead of the NATO summit this week in Madrid.
Yeah, and also this weekend is the Madrid Peace Summit, the counter summit to the NATO summit later this week. So they'll be gathering, I think they've already assembled in Madrid, and there'll be some events today. And I'm sure tomorrow, towards the end of the peace wave, we'll hear an awful lot more about what's going on in Spain and about the peace summit there. So that will be really exciting. It's a fun 24 hours.
It's a fun 24 hours. And we are, as I say, kicking off here in London. We've got some of the leading anti-war figures here in London that will be speaking to us all today. We will then live stream them for you. Plus, we've got some fantastic musicians. Today we've got live Sean Taylor. He's brilliant he's just at Glastonbury, actually.
Yeah. Sean Taylor was at Glastonbury during the week. I'm sure everybody is familiar with that festival. I would be there myself, but I'd rather be here talking to all of you. It's better occasion, really. More time to shine. But some of my colleagues from the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament are down in Glastonbury this weekend. The festival has a long-running connection with CND. I think, in fact, it was actually called originally the CND Festival. So it's a great honor and a privilege to be able to go down there every year and to kind of talk to festival goers. We have 2 setups down there at the festival, and a couple of games, and we engage with the public, and we talk to musicians and other artists, and it's all about kind of raising awareness. And my colleague Sahara also addressed the pyramid stage, which is the main stage at the festival. So she had a really good speech linking nuclear weapons and austerity. Obviously, we are going through kind of a cost of living crisis.
Summer of discontent.
Summer of discontent, that's right, actually. Massive kind of cost of living. Everybody is feeling the pinch across the world. I think in the West, we're very privileged insofar as that perhaps that squeeze isn't as pronounced in some other countries in the global south. But still, nevertheless, it's all relative, isn't it? And it's important to kind of, at times like this, try and link the sheer waste of money that goes into the arms industry, nuclear weapons in particular, which CND like to highlight the colossal waste in replacing nuclear weapons. And at a time when a government will probably use this as an excuse for more austerity, less investment in public services, I think it's more important than ever to really come out and really make those links between the amount of investment in weaponry and militarism when it could be used much more effectively, right?
Absolutely. I think this might be a good time to explain about the RMT and what they're getting up to down the road as well.
Yeah, also today in London there is a demonstration. It's at King's Cross, one of the big stations. If you're a Harry Potter fan, it's the infamous station he leaves from. But the RMT, which is the Rail, Maritime and Transport Union. So the union that represents a lot of rail workers in this country. They've been on strike this week. I think it's the largest scale of strikes that the railway workers have taken in over a generation.
All about pay, all about better working conditions.
Yeah.
So there's pay freezes at the moment and huge job losses, job cuts too. So this is the time, as we said, the summer of discontent, the cost of living crisis, and can all be connected to the wider agenda, particularly linking it to the anti-war movement, the peace movement, where billions of pounds are being pumped into wars abroad, and yet we're seeing the squeeze within our pockets here in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. We're going to switch the camera over shortly because I think my boss is going to give a little introduction to what's going on. Let's do a twist, and you might hear us speaking. And we'll come back to you in a little bit, guys.
But hope you enjoy what everyone's about to say now.
Okay.
There we go.
Good afternoon, comrades, friends, brothers and sisters. Today, anti-war activists in towns and cities across the country are meeting to mark this day of action for peace in Ukraine. And it's 4 months on from the beginning of the war, and we've seen untold suffering, thousands of civilians dead, thousands more Ukrainians have become refugees. And our own government in the Ministry of Defence, at number 10 across the road there, is pouring weapons into the war zone, training troops, actively obstructing efforts for a negotiated peace, all for the benefit of their friends in the arms industry. And so Boris gets to swan around looking like some kind of important wartime leader with one of the most aggressive positions on the conflict. While at home, British people struggle to pay their bills as the cost of living crisis soars, and in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world, people suffer as a result of our government's warmongering and the US and NATO's mission to crush Russia regardless of the death toll of the Ukrainian people. So Stop the War's demands are clear. We call for the immediate withdrawal of Russian troops, an end to NATO expansion, a commitment for a ceasefire and a peaceful end to this war. But in what has already clearly become a proxy war between Russia and NATO, this week is the NATO summit. And we expect there to be even more talking up of war instead of what should be talks for a negotiated peace. We say no to war, no to NATO. I'd like to introduce my co-chair, Kate Hudson, General Secretary of the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, to say a little bit about the summit. Kate.
Thanks very much, Shelley. You're absolutely right to stress that we've got two themes here today which are absolutely interlinked. We're saying no to the war, Russian troops out, end the aggression. We're also recognising the role of NATO in creating the conditions for that. And we're also joining today in a global day of action to say no to war and no to NATO. And today in Madrid, hundreds, if not thousands of people are gathered today. Peace activists from across Spain, but also from internationally, are gathered there for a counter summit to discuss the alternative to NATO. Because we can be absolutely sure there is no solution for peace, there is no solution for security in the hands of NATO. We need to move beyond NATO. We need to dissolve NATO and have a new security architecture internationally that creates a situation of peace and justice, and the conflicts are resolved peacefully through dialogue. Next week, when those heads of state meet together in Madrid, not only will they face opposition from the movement, but they will face opposition from many states across the world. Because now NATO isn't a North Atlantic organisation, NATO is global. So it's not just the North of America, Europe, and a few other bits and pieces. NATO is now organised in Latin America, It's organised in Africa and increasingly organised into Asia. And we know that when they are there assembled in Madrid, they will be talking about their new strategic concept. They've outlined that that is one of the main items on their agenda. Now, we know that every time NATO has a new strategic concept, they are expanding the remit of NATO, whether it's going into Asia, whether it's going into Latin America or Africa. So what are they going to unfold next? Well, the likely scenario is that they will be outlining how they will be confronting China. So building on their proxy war with Russia, they will also be going in the direction of China. So as peace activists, it's absolutely essential that we raise public awareness of what's going on. We're not hearing it in the media, we're not reading it online or in the newspapers. We have a responsibility to get that information out there. And that is part of what is going on today, the global day of action, both against NATO and against this criminal war. Shelley, back to you.
Thanks, Kate. And I know on behalf of all of us here, we send our solidarity to everyone taking to the streets in Madrid for the counter-NATO protest and summit, don't we? I'd now like to introduce a friend of Stop the War Coalition, socialist troubadour Sean Taylor, to play us some songs. Sean.
Good Johnny boy. Hello, brothers and sisters, friends and comrades. It's good to be here. Tides are rising on the sea. We ain't never felt what it meant to be free. The Tories upon the rise, Boris Johnson upon alive, and we all get burned. Now we are so surprised. Stand up, rise, march for freedom, march for our rights. Our enemy is necessary. Stand up and fight. The rich, they get rich, and they don't even try. It's in the name of freedom, but it's just another lie. Stand up, rise up, stand up. Together we stand, and divided we fall. Fighting united and make change for us all. The only way for certain is to share out all the wealth. Capitalism has had its day. Let's put it on a shelf. Stand up, rise up. You gotta stand up. People of the world, we have to unite. For the flame of love, we're gonna have to ignite. Wipe away the poverty, we're gonna wipe away the greed. I'd rather die on my feet than live it right on my knees. Stand, rise, stand up, on the rise. rise up. You gotta stand up now. Stand up. So much. It's an absolute honor to be here today singing for peace. And this song is by a great troubadour called Richie Havens, who very much believed in peace. This song is called Freedom. Freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. I'm alone with my home. I'm alone with my home. Freedom, 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 freedom. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like I'm already I'm alone with my home. I'm alone with my home. With my home. He's not well. 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 He's not well.
Let's hear it for Sean. Peace no more. Now, if you've got a spare hand and you're not having a clap, please go grab one. And someone can take this one off me if you like. Let's give it a chanting, Kate. What do you think?
You go, Christian.
Right, I've got two chants for you. The first one goes, what do we want? Russian troops out. When do we want it? Now. And then the next one goes, I say no to, and you say NATO. You got it?
Yeah.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
I said, what do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
No to.
NATO.
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 No to.
NATO! 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 Well done, comrades, make some noise yourselves! Now, the first speaker I'd like to introduce is the convener of the Stop the War Coalition, Britain's leading anti-war activist, Lindsay German! Thanks very much, Sally and Kate, and thanks to everybody for coming here. It's so important we stand up against this war and also against the consequences of this war, because we were told back in February that when we said we oppose the Russian invasion, we don't want the war, we want to withdraw the Russian troops, but we also said this war has a great deal to do with NATO and to do with NATO expansion. And we were told that was a complete lie. We were told it had nothing to do with NATO. It was just about Russian aggression, about Ukraine. It was just a war between two countries. You look at it now, you can no longer make that case. This war is everything to do with what NATO is doing, as well as with what Russia is doing. And I want to explain why. That after the end of the Cold War, NATO expanded to 13 countries across the whole of Eastern Europe. It expanded in terms of its aggression. It was involved in wars in Yugoslavia, in Afghanistan, in Libya, and in Iraq. And it's continued its aggressive stance. And therefore, when you hear that NATO is a movement for peace, that is a lie. It's exactly the opposite. It's a movement for war. And it is increasing its warlike propensities. We now have NATO involved in what is called the Indo-Pacific. In other words, drumming up conflict with China as the next theatre of war that we're going to see. And that is why we are here today. There is a NATO summit in Madrid this week. Boris Johnson will be at that summit, and they will commit to letting Sweden and Finland join NATO. They will commit to more weapons and more money spent on the war with NATO, with Russia. And they will commit to more and more troops going into Eastern Europe. Already there are 10 times the number of troops under NATO command in Eastern Europe than there were the day before Russia invaded. There are 100 NATO surveillance planes a day flying around the borders of Ukraine. There is $40 billion promised by Joe Biden to go to arming Ukraine. This is not going to help the Ukrainian people. It is going to lead to more war. And there is only three choices about the war in Ukraine. One is it becomes a direct war with the Western powers. One is that it continues as it continues in countries like Afghanistan, and this war goes on for decades and destroys the country, destroys many of the people in Ukraine, and leaves it war-torn in the way that Afghanistan has been. Or the third alternative is that there are peace negotiations and an end to war. And people say, do you trust Putin over that war? No, I don't trust Putin. Do I trust Joe Biden? No, I don't. Do I trust Boris Johnson? You'd be an absolute fool to live in this country and trust Boris Johnson about anything. I don't trust any of these people, but I do say there has to be a ceasefire, there has to be troop withdrawal, and there has to be an end to this war, because the alternative is much, much worse than that prospect. Look at what is happening throughout Europe. The militarization of Europe, the doubling of money spent in Germany on the military over the next couple of years, mostly in the form of nuclear-armed Russian, American fighter planes. Look at what is happening to people around the world. Already there are real issues with food poverty in the global south, and the cost of living in this country is being exacerbated by shortages of wheat, by shortages of sunflower oil, and by other shortages affected by the war. None of them give a damn about any of this. They don't care about the cost of living crisis, but they always find money for war. The new chief of the British Army said last week, we are looking towards waging a land war with Russia.
We're looking towards waging a war which will involve tanks. I must say the British Army has got very short memories. They were driven out of Iraq by the people of Iraq, out of Basra. They were driven out of Afghanistan last year by the Afghan people. The idea that they're in any position to fight a war against anybody, let alone Russia, is absolutely fanciful. But it's not about that seriously, because they know the US will come in and provide the weapons and everything else that is needed. It's about building up an atmosphere where we have a return not to the old imperialism, but to the new imperialism, with the aircraft carriers, with the increased defence spending, with all the things that they are talking about. And we have to reject all of that. And that is what NATO stands for. And it strikes me as incredible when the rail workers are on strike demanding a very modest pay increase to do with the cost of living, where workers are balloting, the teachers and the post workers and all these different groups are balloting for a fair increase to keep pace with inflation. We're told we can't afford any of this, but we can afford the 45 billion and upwards that we spend every year in defence and all the extra money that goes on it. Our message here today is simple. No to the war, no to NATO. Let's kick all of these people out and let's build a world based on justice and peace.
Very much indeed, indeed. Powerful speech, telling it like it is. So, voices from the peace movement are more important now than they ever have been, as we're seeing the drive to war ratcheting up. We're seeing massively increased militarisation. So voices from pacifists are very important too. So it's a great pleasure to welcome now Simon Hill from the Peace Pledge Union. Welcome, Simon.
Thanks very much, Kate. I'm just going to check we've got the microphone at the right angle. That's all right. Is that okay? All right, I'll go on that one. Okay. Thanks very much, Kate. Thanks everybody who's here. It's good to see so many people determined to stand against Putin's invasion. Okay, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, it's great to see so many people standing against both Putin and NATO, against militarism from all sides. My name's Simon. I'm here with members of the Peace Pledge Union. We're a group who pledge to resist war and to tackle the causes of war. And we're the British section of War Resisters International. So it's been a real privilege to work with peace activists in Ukraine and Russia and around the world. And I've been speaking on Zoom to pacifists in Ukraine. You can hear the missiles in the background when you talk to them. And we've been in touch with peace activists in Russia who are so bravely standing up and speaking out. And what comes across very clearly is that those of us in Britain and in Russia and in Ukraine and everywhere else who are resisting war, who want peace, we have far more in common with each other than we do with the militarists and the generals and the politicians and the arms dealers who drive war, whether they drive it from London or Moscow or Washington. Because war and militarism are another way in which the rich and powerful exploit the rest of us. People are recruited, often from the poorest and most vulnerable backgrounds, to join the armed forces, brutalised through military training, sent to kill other poorer people elsewhere in the world, and then dumped back into poverty when they leave. And that's how militarism works. And that's why we're speaking out against that today. We're speaking out against Putin's militarism and against NATO militarism, because they're really not that different. You know, on the Peace Pledge Union Twitter account, we posted a picture the other day of children in Russia at a military parade and children in Britain at an Armed Forces Day celebration. Both lots being militarised, both being presented with an image of war as positive and exciting. And when we said they looked the same, we had a response from a pro-war commentator on Twitter. He said they don't look the same. The British troops are dressed much more smartly. If that's the only difference, I think he's rather proved our point. Because today is Armed Forces Day. introduced in 2009 because the government was frightened of our opposition to Iraq and Afghanistan, because the head of the army at the time said that public opinion was the biggest single danger to the success of the British Armed Forces. British public opinion, that is. We're the biggest single danger, according to him. So things like Armed Forces Day, to introduce everyday militarism, the national event for Armed Forces Day in Scarborough today. My colleagues just sent me photos. There's children being invited to handle guns, to sit at the controls of artillery pieces. 7, 8-year-old kids being presented with this image. And I'm in touch with an activist called Ilya in Russia, and he's been campaigning against militarism in schools in Russia. And he says, what you're doing in Britain is so important because we must resist militarism everywhere. We must be speaking out against the militarization of children everywhere. That's why we've been leafleting outside the Ministry of so-called Defence this morning, challenging Armed Forces Day, challenging the abusive nature of all armed forces, abusing their own members. 1 in 29 young women who joined the army, British Army in 2021, had reported being raped or sexually assaulted by the end of the year within the army. And this is an organisation we're told to celebrate today. So we're speaking out not only against war, but against the everyday militarism that makes this normal, because everyday militarism brings up children, conscripts our minds, turns us all into people who could support another war in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. So stop the war today, stop all wars today, and stop the militarism that means we stop wars in the future. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Simon. Solidarity to you and everyone at the Peace Pledge Union for the work that you do. Now, Simon mentioned that today is National Armed Forces Day. There's another national event taking place today, and that's the RMT Railway Strike. And the RMT Union is an affiliate of the Stop the War Coalition, and we're very, very proud that they are. And we're very proud of the link that they make to the billions spent on defence spending and militarism in this country, with the cost of living crisis their members are standing up against today and fighting. So I know on behalf of all of us, we're sending our solidarity to the other demonstration that's taking place right now at King's Cross, which is a big rally in support of the RMT. Victory to railway workers. I'd now like to introduce a speaker who's representing the Free Assange campaign. It's John Rees.
Thanks very much, Shelley. Well, we're stood here in front of the Ministry of Defence, and on the other side of the military, of this ministry, there's a huge memorial garden. And in that memorial garden, there are statues, plaques, and monuments to previous wars, to previous war leaders. And there's a new monument there. There's a new monument which is huge, no doubt costly, cost many times the wages of an RMT member, many times the cost of safely housing refugees in this country. It's a monument to the Iraq and Afghan wars. And it's an important thing to note, because the establishment, the people in this building, the people over there in Downing Street, will, if we allow them to do so, memorialise unjust conflicts, will warp our perception of the past in order to make war more palatable in the future. And to stand against that, we need a different source of information. We need something that isn't official government handouts, official government pronouncements, or official monuments to the past wars. We need the truth about the war and what it cost. And Julian Assange and WikiLeaks provided the truth about the Afghan and Iraq wars. And because he did so, he's now entering his 4th year in Belmarsh High Security Prison. And Priti Patel last week agreed to extradite him, to send him to the United States, where he will face trial and a possible 175-year prison sentence for revealing the truth about Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, when we founded Stop the War, we founded it on 3 principles: to stop wars, and then to fight against the inevitable racist backlash that would arise because of them, and to defend civil liberties, because we knew that they would be under attack. And that is why the Stop the War Coalition has always said that Julian Assange should be free. This kind of journalism is what we need, and we now have to redouble our efforts to get him out of Belmarsh and to stop him being extradited to the United States. So please, next week, we have a protest bus going round, starting from 11 a.m. next Friday, because it's his birthday, the 4th birthday he'll spend in Belmarsh, and it's a form of protest about that. There's a new film about the movement to free Julian Assange, which is going into cinemas around the country, and there will be demonstrations in the autumn. Please go to the Don't Extradite Assange website, sign up for the newsletter, pledge yourself to campaign to free Julian Assange. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed, John. And please, everyone, do everything you can to support the campaign to ensure that Julian meets with the justice that he rightly deserves. So now we're heading for another musical interlude. Raised Voices Choir are here with us today. While they're making their way over, I'll just tell you, the last time I saw them performing was at RAF Lakenheath last month. Lakenheath is the United States Air Force Base over in Suffolk, and it's where the US are bringing nuclear weapons back to. So we had a good day out there, and we're going to have another day of protest at Lakenheath in September. So please put that in your diaries. Okay, Raised Voices Choir, come on over here. Very big hand for Raised Voices Choir. So, up to you. Are you going to use the mic? You can go to They're going to do it mic free. So attention now, please, everybody. Thank you.
Our first song is called The War Machine. It was written sometime in the 1990s by Sue Gilmurray, but she's done an update this year to include the nuclear weapons in the song. So it's her own adaptation she did especially for Lakenheath this year.
And the poor and the weak get trampled on the ground. And when we stand and cry our ground, by the great flag of the dollar of the town and the war machine goes round. In the street that lives and cries, making tools to shatter human lives, and our honest water behind the sky. Knowing distant forests, nameless view, as the war machine goes round. And the war machine goes round and round, and the poor and the weak get trampled on the ground. And when we stand there, cries our ground. But we the flag of the dollar and the pound, as the war machine goes round. And the industry grows more and more, adding nuclear weapons to its door. Make a plan to find it we stand as the war machine rolls round. And the war machine rolls round and round. And the poor and the weak get trampled on the ground. And when we stand, their cries are drowned. By the king of the flag, of the dollar and the pound, as the war machine rolls round. To raise our voice and say, we must take this nuclear threat away. We must use our words to carry his team. World can never bring peace on the war machine goes down. And the war machine goes round and round. And the poor and the weak get trampled on the ground. And from where we stand, their cries are drowned. By the faith and the plan of the dollar and the crown, as the war machine goes round. Our next one is Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Me Round. No, sorry, it's Ain't Gonna Start a War. It's written by Roxanne Smith, and we've written some extra verses for it. Don't tell the truth of war. Lay down your bones. Lay your weapons down. Lay down your guns. Don't tell the truth of war. Lay down your bones and drown. Lay your weapons down. Lay down your guns. Lay down you can't fall. Down your suffering. Lay down your bones. Lay down your bones. My deliverance song. Lay down you can't fall. Down your suffering. Lay down your bones. Lay down your bones. My deliverance song. Lay down your foundations. Lay your weapons down. Lay down your bones. Lay down your bones. My deliverance song. Our last song is one of the many versions of Bella Ciao. We've adopted this tune from Italy and adapted it for many different purposes this time. For peace and justice, We want an end to war right now. We are saying freedom on NATO. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. We are saying freedom on NATO. Take away the nuclear threat. We are singing with this madness. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. We are singing to end this madness. We want to stop this madness now. We want to change now. Make more weapons. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. We want to change now. Make more weapons. They endanger all the world. We are singing peace and justice. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. We are singing for peace and justice. We are the end to war right now.
Let's hear it for the raised voices choir, everyone! Stop using it for a bit of our own singing. So how about it? When I say 1, 2, 3, 4, you say stop the killing, stop the war, and on 5, 6, 7, 8, ceasefire now, don't escalate. You get it? Let's do a run through. 1, 2, 3, 4, stop the killing, stop the war. 5, 6, 7, 8, ceasefire now, don't escalate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop the killing, stop the war. 5, 6, 7, 8. Too long. Ceasefire now, don't escalate. All right. Now, you might have heard there's another demonstration taking place just a few meters away. Now, these are British Sudanese activists who are campaigning against the militarism and the repression in Sudan that is backed by NATO. So we've invited one of them to come and speak to us to say a few words about their struggle. I know that we all support them. So I'd like to welcome Abdurrahim Abayazid. Abdurrahim, where are you? Please make him very, very welcome.
We are all against NATO. We are all against NATO, and as you can see, I'm wearing a T-shirt against the military. I'm sorry to give you my back. So what I'm saying, I mean, like, we all sharing the same thingy. I mean, like, we're against war. We're against war in our country. We're against war everywhere. So we should be, we must be together. Sudanese people just around the corner, they've been against the military, which is being, as she said, supported by the NATO, supported by the UN, supported by the government of UK, supported by the EU, supported by the US. And people are dying there from, I mean, like, from the military, from the violence being committed by the military, from the crucial, I mean, like, way of dealing with peaceful demonstrations. We are so far advanced, like we're talking about nuclear, against nuclear. Over there, we are fighting against the traditional pistols and killing instruments. I mean, like, people is being killed, still being killed by so many means. The people whom they are ruling in Sudan now, or took power in Sudan by force, by coup, they are from the same people, same committee for the al-Bashir, the same committee whom they are done, same generals whom they are done the genocide in Darfur, the genocide in Nuba Mountains and Blue Nile State. What we are aiming for, we're looking for your support. And also, as we said, I mean, like, NATO is quite involved. NATO is quite involved in Sudan, quite involved in keeping silent, quite involved in running the behind show. So we are all I'm conveying my people support your campaign. Stop the war. Stop the war in Ukraine. Stop the war everywhere. So thank you very much, and long life struggle for peace and freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, and solidarity to you and all your comrades, and we're united in our opposition to war and to NATO. So it's a pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Jim Roach from the Irish Anti-War Movement. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. I'm actually here as a tourist, so thanks to Stop the War and CND for organising this and for asking me to speak. As you may know or not know, Ireland is a neutral country. However, that neutrality has been breached since 2001, when the government of the day allowed the US military to use Shannon Airport as a stopover. So 2 to 3 million US troops have passed through Shannon Airport. The planes are refueled. Rendition flights have passed through there as well. And there's been a huge move by the establishment parties of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael since the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian Federation to become part of the camp, if you like, and for increased militarization in Ireland, and ultimately to join NATO. Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach, let drop at an interview 2 weeks ago that Ireland would not need a referendum to join NATO. Yet he ignored completely the three different polls, opinion polls have been undertaken since February, and all of them show clearly that the majority of Irish people want Ireland to remain a neutral country. The last poll was in April, and 67% said they want Ireland to remain neutral. So we're now working with other groups and with progressive politicians to launch a campaign to maintain Ireland's neutrality and to get it written into the Constitution so that Ireland can contribute to peaceful solutions to political conflicts that are happening around the world. And that is what we'll be focusing on in the next coming weeks and months. Obviously within the context of the horrific war in Ukraine, which we all want to see stop, but also talking about other wars like the war in Yemen, which we hardly ever hear about. It's the hidden war where 370,000 people have been killed, 10,000 children minimum, horrific actions by the Saudi-led coalition there. So thank you again for doing this, and let's keep on struggling together to end war and bring peace to the world. Thank you.
Very much indeed, Jim, and solidarity to your struggle to maintain your neutrality. Congratulations on the work that your movement's done at Shannon over so many years. We're heading towards our last speaker, but I'm just going to ask Shelley, do you want to try some more chanting there?
Let's give it a go. Should we go back to the ones we did before? They're a little bit more catchy, weren't they?
Simple.
Okay, so what do we want? Russian troops out. When do we want it now? And then when I say no to, you flip it and say NATO. You got it?
Yeah.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
Say a bit louder. What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
And when do we want it?
Now.
Is that what do we want?
Russian troops out.
And when do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
No to.
NATO.
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 No to. No to. No to.
NATO.
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 What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Russian troops out.
When do we want it?
Now.
When I say stop, you say the war. Stop.
The war.
Stop.
The war.
When I say stop, you say the war. Stop.
The war.
Stop.
The war.
Stop. Stop. Stop.
War, war, war.
Nice one, friend. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kate.
Thanks very much indeed, Shelley. And it goes to me now to introduce our final speaker before we go to a further musical set from our socialist troubadour. So it's a pleasure to welcome Andrew Murray, long-time chair of the Stop the War Coalition and now our very eminent vice president. Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed, Kate, and welcome, comrades. Comrades, from the first day of this war, Stop the War condemned the Russian invasion. We said it was wrong, it was an act of aggression, and it cannot be justified. The deaths and destruction it has caused cannot be justified. But unjustified does not mean unprovoked. And this is a war that NATO has been working for. And that is not an aberration. As earlier speakers have said, war is now in NATO's DNA. NATO fought the war in Yugoslavia, a country still wrecked, still not recovered from that aggression. NATO fought and led the occupation of Afghanistan that ended disastrously after 20 years of bloodshed and suffering. And let me just say here on Afghanistan, there's a terrible humanitarian catastrophe happening there. And Joe Biden has seized money in the Afghan bank money. That money should be returned to the Afghan people to relieve their suffering. And NATO was responsible for the attack on Libya in 2011, which has destroyed the Libyan state and which has caused a huge refugee crisis that resonates to this day. So NATO, it is the big lie that NATO is a peaceful organisation. It is a force for war and aggression and at the root of many of the problems that we face today. Now, we're not supposed to say that. Saying this to get you drummed out of the Labour Party. The two things Keir Starmer can't bear are criticism of NATO or solidarity with the RMT, and we need to show both. And this war, as I said, is on NATO's account as well as Putin's, and other speakers have indicated the extent of NATO involvement. But I think we need to be alert now to the danger of escalation, of this war spreading. Just this week, a NATO member, Lithuania, at the instigation of the EU, blocked Russia from moving goods, not military, even military equipment, just goods, from one part of the Russian Federation to another part in Kaliningrad. That is a recipe for conflict, for escalation and war, and you would almost think that they are wanting it. Gratuitous provocations that are just likely to make a dreadful war still worse. And it is already causing immense suffering outside Ukraine. The economic dislocation from this war is much greater than from the previous wars that the Stop the War coalition has campaigned against. It is causing hunger and starvation in much of the world, and that is another reason why we need to be pressing for negotiations and a ceasefire now. France, Germany, Italy, they are pressing for negotiations. China wants peace. India wants peace. Nearly all of Africa wants peace. Latin America wants peace. The great majority of the world believes this war can and should be brought to an end now. But the British government doesn't. The British government over there is still fighting to escalate and prolong this war, pouring in weapons, pouring in rhetoric, and Boris Johnson travels around the world. He goes off to Kiev at the merest whisper of negotiations to try and prolong the war so he can prolong his corrupt term in office.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Boris Johnson said today that he is not going to undergo a psychological transformation. Well, that would be to expect miracles. But we want a political transformation, not just on the behalf of Boris Johnson, but on the behalf of the so-called official opposition, to get to the side where most of the world is, in pushing for peace, in pushing for an end to this war, in pushing for realistic negotiations that will, amongst other things, halt NATO's expansion, and to push for a new security architecture that can bring genuine peace to our continent. So stop the war. Thank you very much.
Very much indeed, Andrew, brilliant. And now we return to the great Sean Taylor, Socialist Troubadour, for his second set. Welcome back, Sean. Thank you very much. Everyone all right?
Yeah.
But this song is a little bit different. This is a spoken word song. This is an alternative English national anthem. I was waiting for a call from the Queen for the Jubilee weekend, but it never came. Quite disappointed. This is called This Is England. Born and raised under Maggie's dreams, when did love become a stain? In this epoch we will find a broken generation left behind. Buy one, get one free, more for you and more for me. Look at the deals, unlimited text, hands free and more minutes to get. Lots of noise, but nothing to say. Looking for magic, but found a case. Celebrities on ice, in the ring. Been on such a journey, just don't let them sing. Breathe in. Breathe out. Sex addict, internet porn, I come with a bed sheets with more political correctness with a constant erection. Everyone's got some kind of condition. It's an antidepressant competition. You better turn off the ignition. Get high on hipster nutrition with ornate beers and craft beer highs, coffee shakes and gentrified. Where has my city gone? Sugar is the new nicotine. But smoking kept me thin with a sexy old yellow tooth grin. Man, I got a shadow on the line, but I can always grow when I'm from. Breathe in. Breathe out. We pay the world for watered down beer, but all music is free. Spotify, this poem for you and me. Everybody meets on Tinder, even Romeo and Juliet. Aren't you married yet? Have kids, settle down, get a job. When you're in for life, you can be a slum. We're addicted to darkness, the worst of the worst. The world that owns us is cradled in a hearse. And Brexit news and Brexit blues. Find a death spot to sell our fish and chips to. We play hard to get, but not for long. Light one up and get out of bond. We take cards, contactless and cash. Half remember tales of whiskey and ash. We want our country back, they scream, but now they can't find where they left it. As we Morris stars who wrecked it. Breathe out. Keyboard warrior, get your high for $1. Ain't nothing to say, but everything's the Holocaust. Nobody likes us, but we don't care, because Britain's only great when it bombs everywhere. We don't want immigrants, only millionaires. Hearts and minds and chat show prayers in this little England cave. We are America's little slave. Into wars all the way to the grave. You know, it's a special relationship. McDonald's a beast. Heart condition, diabetes increase. We got too fat to march for peace. We are still full of jism, thanks to Facebook algorithms. So write me a jingle with 1,000,000 hooks. WhatsApp me, Mr. Shakespeare. No time for books, because this is England with a cup of tea and a can of Stella. Singing God save the Queen. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Thank you so much. Do you want to sing a bit? Yeah. All right. This song is called Resist, Revolt and Fight. I wrote this song especially when Tony Blair was getting knighted. The only good thing to come out of it. All right. So the chorus of this song is Resist, Revolt and Fight. You got that? All right. bold and fight.
Raise voice in choir. Hello, everybody.
Resist,
Taking a break.
resist, real bold and fight. Resist, real bold and fight. Resist, real bold and fight. It don't matter what you do. Resist, real bold and fight. The queue for the food bank, it goes right around the block. The queue for the food bank goes right around the block. But people keep voting Tory, when will it stop? Resist, we'll vote and fight. Everybody, resist, we'll vote and fight. Resist, we'll vote and fight, buddy. Resist, we'll vote and fight. Don't matter what you do, but resist, we'll vote and fight. Go back to eating Boris Johnson, you stupid fool. I said, go back to eating Boris Johnson, you stupid fool. I can tell you what happened, cause I went to a comprehensive school. They resist, red, vote, and fight. Resist, red, vote, and fight. Resist, red, vote, and fight. Everybody, resist, red, vote, and fight. It don't matter what you do, resist, red, vote, and fight. Hide in your belt, says the queen with a crown on her head. Hide in your belt, says that old queen with a crown on her head. There's plenty of rooms in Buckingham Palace for the homeless to have beds. We say resist, red, bold, and fight. 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 Don't matter what you do, resist, red, bold, and fight. The queue for the food bag, it goes around the block. The queue for the food bag goes right around the block. But they keep going, Tory, man, when hey, resist, red, bold, and fight. Resist, red, bold, and fight. Resist, red, bold, and fight. Everybody, resist, red, bold, and fight. It don't matter what you do, resist, red, bold, and fight. Come on. Hey, now, resist, red, bold, and fight. Come on. Resist, red, bold, and fight. Resist, red, bold, and fight. Resist, red, bold, and fight. It don't matter what you do, resist, red, bold, and fight. Thank you so much. Peace.
Thank you so much, Sean. Now, it's a thank you from me and Kate. I'd like to say to all of you, we're here today, but there are people in towns and cities across the country today taking action, doing protests, doing storms for this day of action for peace in Ukraine. I've also got a quick plug. Hot off the press today is our brand new briefing. NATO War Alliance. You can find out more inside about why we are against NATO. It's £5. You can pick one up on the stall. If you're not a member of the Stop the War Coalition, please join us. Thank you. Kate.
Thanks very much, Nelly. Can I give a plug for Sean Taylor's new album, The Path into Blue? So if you like what you heard, you can hear more. So big recommendation for that. When you're looking at your diaries after you've had your lovely summer holidays, put 17th of September in your diary for going to the RAF USAF Lakenheath Air Base to protest against the new nuclear weapons going there from the United States. So there's a lot to do. There's many struggles to be active in, put the anti-war and peace struggle at its heart. Join Stop the War and, of course, CND, Shirley.
Absolutely.
Join both.
Thank you to everyone that spoke. Thank you, Kay. Thanks to all our speakers. Thanks to you guys for coming. Solidarity. Take care.
Hey!
Oh, we're back. We're back. Oh, 1 second. Okay, everybody. Myself and
Hello,
Shaz.
hello, welcome back to us. We really hope that you enjoyed all of those speakers today. I think it was very, very informative.
We covered a lot of bases,
We did cover a lot
actually.
of
We had a
bases.
few extra special guests joining us. Jim Roach from the Irish anti-war movement.
Of course, our Sudanese comrades.
And yeah, so we actually ended up having we had people outside of our time zone. That's how on it we were.
We were
We
absolutely.
went all the way around to Sudan to pick some people up.
Well, exactly.
Um,
But of course, key messages today, Russian troops out. We've said that from the very beginning on February the 24th. But also note to NATO, you can't get this conflict without the absolute aggressive role of NATO. I think that was something that really was quite strong throughout the speech
and
today.
linking it to while there's austerity and the tightening of the belt for average people in every country, there's always going to be more money for state-of-the-art weapons, for more procurement, for more profit for military industries. And I'll tell you what, that 2% for the NATO budget isn't going to be the treasury departments in each country. They're not going to be slicing that off, are they, to pay for healthcare and things like that.
Especially, going into this NATO summit this week, we are going to be hearing of more troops to be sent to eastward. We're going to be hearing of more weapons, artillery, arms, you name it. They're going to sign up for it. And that is, again, another key theme of these speeches. That the threat, the risks of escalation are really, really quite prominent now.
Yeah, exactly. And like we're going to hear more from this thread today, I think. Like people, as we go to other countries and other people take over and explain their peace movements and what they've been up to.
I might go and grab our convener of the Stop the War Coalition.
Yes.
After a few
Okay.
breaks.
So we're going to be wrapping up soon. Let me just find where the shade is best. So I want to have a good natural spotlight on you guys. We're going to be wrapping up soon, but first of all, let's have a couple of words with Lindsay.
Stop the War Coalition convener. Thank you, Lindsay German. Thanks for joining us. We are now live. This is a global live stream, a 24-hour live stream. And so now we have Lindsay, and I think one of the key things throughout the conversation today, speech today, was how aggressive NATO really is. Can you explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think the point about that is that everybody thinks that NATO was just set up as a defensive alliance. That isn't true. After the Second World War, it was set up to protect Western Europe and to look at maintaining the US influence in Western Europe. And whereas the Warsaw Pact, which was the old Soviet Union pact, military pact, that was dissolved in 1993. NATO not only wasn't dissolved, it expanded massively, and it is going not just in Europe now, it's intervening wars in Afghanistan, in Libya, and is now intervening militarily in the whole Indo-Pacific region. So, it's an aggressive alliance, it's not a defensive alliance.
And certainly, history is obviously repeating itself in so many ways. We're seeing how aggressive it really is. There is an argument I do want to debunk here with you while we've got you. Many people are saying, "Oh, we can't sit back and do nothing." Obviously, that is a similar rhetoric we've heard in the past to try and justify military interventions as we've heard in the past. That is something that we're hearing. Arm Ukraine. Why is it so important not to?
Well, I think the real issue is when people say we can't sit back and do nothing, what exactly do they want to do? Do they want to make it worse? And my argument is pouring weapons into Ukraine, and we're talking now about tanks, we're talking about anti-aircraft guns, we're talking about all these, will not make Ukrainian people safer. It will not end the war, it will escalate. So that's my first point. It also has the potential to spill over into a much bigger war. There was conflict this week between Lithuania and Russia over the Russian enclave of Leningrad, and you have to go through Lithuania to transport rail from one bit of road to another. They restricted this transport. That could easily, those that could easily, and that's the thing that I think. So when people say, "Oh, pouring lemons is a solution," it's exactly the opposite. It's going to make a much better.
And definitely we're seeing a huge risk of escalation now. What role does Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, play in now? Of course, he's been to Kiev twice now. It doesn't seem like he's calling for any peaceful solutions anytime soon.
He's deliberately gone to Kiev to actually boost the case for not negotiating, for not having peaceful, and for continuing the war. He wants to continue the war, partly to continue the war, partly to save his own skin for next year. So when the Tory MPs criticise because we can't put the war on, Boris Johnson isn't at war, but he's using this war in the most despicable way to kind of cover up what he's doing. So we need to be aware that British government is one of the worst in the world at encouraging hormones.
Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Thank you. Also, just to say, it wasn't just London that was active today. In fact, we had 32 local groups up and down the country in the United Kingdom campaigning CND and Stop War Coalition side by side, shoulder to shoulder, all over the country. We've had loads of tweets coming in from various different places around the UK. So it has been a brilliant day of it. I'm going to now hand you over to Podrick again, who is joined by Kate Hudson from the CND.
Yes, Kate, come over. Hello. And I finally get to interview.
It's been a very busy day. So I just want to say hello to everyone out there internationally. We're all there in solidarity together against war, for peace, against NATO, for a real security alternative, which is in the interest of peace and justice. That's what we're all saying today, isn't it, Podrick? Wherever we are.
We are. And this has been a big week as well for the anti-nuclear movement. There was the first meeting of states parties to the UN Treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Little update on that, or your thoughts on that week?
Yeah, well, it's as you say, it's been a real roller coaster this week. And just for people who don't know, in Britain here, we're also having a big surge in industrial militancy as well. Those of you who are interested in that kind of thing, our trade unions are really getting active. So as well as going to Glastonbury, we've had a whole CND contingent at the festival in Glastonbury. We've also had trouble getting around. We're in solidarity with the striking rail workers. As Podrick says, we've had a contingent over in Vienna for the first meeting of the state parties. The TPNW couldn't be more important. And then, of course, up in Scotland, there's been events taking place at the Faslane nuclear base, thanks to Scottish CND. And then, of course, we've got contingents over there in Madrid. And I know that these kinds of activities are taking place all around the world. And I know here in London, CND wants to say a big thank you to the International Peace Bureau, to WorldBeyondWar, and all those organisations that have made this global peace wave possible. So, onwards and upwards.
Yeah, it is. I think the exciting thing about this event for me was kind of coordinating with people around the world. It's quite invigorating when you know that it's not just our organisation or Stop the War in it together. Shadi is still here.
It's the global majority.
It is, yeah, but it's very encouraging that we are all at this together. We are all coming together for this one message of peace and against militarism, and it's just really invigorating. I think long may it continue. Before we wrap up, another just a little, I think it's worth giving our testimony, I suppose, to the legacy of Bruce Kent, who passed away just 2 weeks ago.
Many people internationally, many of you out there watching this will have known Bruce Kent, the incredible activist, anti-nuclear activist from the 1970s onwards. He was General Secretary and Chair of CND during the 1980s, and he was just an inspirational figure. You know, everyone in Britain at that time knew him, and every time I went out with him on the train to a meeting, walking down the street, people would come up to him and talk to him. He was like the rock star of the peace movement, to be honest. We're so sad to have lost him. but we're so proud that he had that struggle for peace throughout his life, and he was so associated with CNG.
And I think his legacy is very much in encouraging more people to become activists, right? And I think that lasts to this day, up until he was no longer with us. He was inspiring other people to go out and to campaign in a good humoured way as well, right? It's serious business, but at the same time, there is certainly room for humour. And
he could give a great speech, Patrick, as you know. He was giving a speech in Trafalgar Square against the war just a couple of months ago. But he wasn't just a man for speeches or talking. He was a man of action. And that is his legacy above all. You know, get out there and do something. Get out there and fight.
And that's what we can all do.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are coming towards the end of our stream. Before we say goodbye from London, let me set up the next part of our segment from the Peace Wave. It's been a real privilege for me to work with these people, activists from Sahara Youth Against Occupation. They're a fantastic group of non-violent anti-war activists in Western Sahara. And the presentation they've prepared a number of really good videos. They will explain different aspects of the Moroccan occupation in Western Sahara. There's three videos there. The first person you will see, I think, is Mariam, who has been the main person on that, and she's done such a fantastic job. So congratulations to her and all of her friends who've worked together on this. And then after those presentations, we're going to be treated to some indigenous music from Western Sahara. I had the pleasure of listening to it a little bit earlier, and it really is some good stuff. So we've had some really nice music this evening, or this afternoon. I think Sahara Libre just commented there. So hello to everyone watching in Western Sahara, and peace and love to you all. Theo and everybody in Berlin, this is going to be the sign for us to log off. So we will say goodbye to you now.
Thank you for joining us here in London. Yes. It's great to be here and bring you all in to what we're doing here in the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a really, really insightful afternoon. It's been brilliant.
It's been wicked. Okay, so thank you from London, and best of luck in the Americas when you guys pick up later on. And we're off to have a cold
solidarity.
We're off to have a cold drink, I think now. Well deserved. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Bye. I'll wait until we start screen sharing. Bingo. Okay, good job.
Western Sahara, known as Africa's last colony in the modern era. The area of Western Sahara is 260,000 kilometers. Its inhabitants are called Sahrawis. For centuries, Sahrawis were nomadic tribes living in the Saharan desert. They used to travel freely across the desert, searching for the best pasture lands and water for their goats and camels. In 1885, at Berlin Conference, Europe divided the African continent. Each European country received its parts, and Spain took the area known today as Western Sahara. Africa was divided by improvised borders. Those who once were free nomadic tribal families became prisoners of artificial boundaries and suppressed by a colonial power. Spain, likewise the other colonial rules, began to exploit the local natural resources. In 1963, Spain discovered the largest phosphate reserve in the world. For decades, Sahrawis peacefully coexisted with the Spanish rulers, but in 17th, nationalist movement arose across Africa. Sahrawis began to feel that Western Sahara was their land and their nation. In 1973, a group of Sahrawi youth commissioned by Sahrawi people established the Popular Front for the Liberation of Sagi al-Hamra and Wadi al-Dhahab, called the Polisario Front. They adopted the armed struggle for Spanish colonialism. Back then, the United Nations was involved in the decolonization process of all African countries. Spain was forced to leave Western Sahara and began to negotiate independence with the Sahrawis. But the Moroccan King Hassan II claimed that the territory was and will always be a part of Morocco. In 1975, as a Spanish dictatorship Franco was dying, while Hassan II organized the Green March, invading the Sahrawi territory with 350,000 civilians and 25,000 soldiers. Meanwhile, the Moroccan regime, supported by France, signed the Madrid Tripartite Agreement with Spain and Mauritania, with the purpose of dividing Western Sahara. Spain handed over the administration of Western Sahara, but never relinquished its sovereignty. The Polisario Front continued its war against the Moroccan occupation. During this war, the Moroccan occupation used many internationally prohibited weapons supported by France and Israel, such as phosphorus and napalm bombs, to kill and exterminate the Sahrawis in many massacres. In 1981, supported by US, France, and Israeli occupation, Morocco began to build a 2,700-kilometer continuous wall of shame, which includes more than 8 million of bombs, and divided Western Sahara and Sahara people into two separated parts. As soon as the Cold War was over, the US decided to end this war. In 1991, both parties approved a peace plan organized by the UN with only one condition: that a referendum will take place in which of the Sahrawis should decide the future of Western Sahara. The Moroccan regime trained Moroccan settlers on Sahrawi language, customs, and cultures to include them in the Sahrawi census. Up to date, Morocco hasn't let the United Nations sponsored referendum to take place. For the last 30 years, the US and France have always supported Morocco in the UN to avoid the peace plan to be completely achieved. The situation has led to the status quo. Half of the Sahara population wait for a peaceful solution in the refugee camps in Algeria, while the other half remain in the occupied territories under Moroccan occupation. Almost 2 years ago, Morocco violated the ceasefire agreement signed in 1991. The war between Morocco and Polisario Front began again. It continues until now. The United Nations hasn't yet taken any serious position regarding the right of Sahrawi people to self-determination, which has been waiting for more than 30 years, and the Moroccan occupation hasn't been condemned despite its violation of international law.
The people of Western Sahara are an Arab, Muslim, and African people, a mixture that has given rise to a special and very rich culture. This is called Hassaniya culture, and the Sahrawis share it with their neighbors, the Mauritanians. The Sahrawis speak the Hassaniya dialect, which is made up of 90% Arabic and 10% Spanish, as a result of Western Sahara having been a Spanish colony. The typical dress for women is the malhfa, and for men is the ra'a. Sahrawi society is characterized by generosity, hospitality, and solidarity among neighbors. It is a society that has always lived in nomadic communities in freedom, so the khaima is the representation of the home of the free Sahrawi. It is a tent that they can carry with them wherever they go. It has 4 doors, front one, back one, and one on each side. and they are always kept open. In addition, the Sahrawi considered the camel to be the most faithful of companion animals, in which they find meat, milk, and means of transport. Moreover, they find in the camel a friend that has always helped them in their struggle against colonialism and the occupation. And we cannot forget the tea, an essential part of the Sahrawi life, as there is no problem to solve, no subject to discuss, no sadness or joy without a tray of tea. So between sips, 1,000 stories are told. So we can say that Sahrawi culture is not only culture, but it is also a form of teaching and education that includes from the respect for elders to the value of the women, who are considered a strong and powerful component of the Sahrawi society. And as a culture is literature, poetry, and music, Sahrawi poetry is characterized by an oral literature, transmitting historical facts, important events, and legends from one generation to another, thus preventing colonialism from erasing the cultural and social aspects that characterize Sahrawi people.
يا الشعب الصحراوي يرعاه ما كنت تحاني حد يجيك يعطيك المصير وعنها تقوم اصنع مصيرك بيديك عندي عن ما عنك محجوب نيت فيك اعداء الشعوب في الشمال لا في الجنوب بانت لك ذيك ابطال انت فيك الشعب اللي حقك مسؤول عشان منك والخلطه فيك.
Now let's talk about Sahrawi music, an exotic blend of African and Arabic folklore that makes it unique. Moreover, for the Sahrawi people, music is considered one of their best weapons against colonialism and occupation. Apart from songs on romantic, social, and religious themes, the most acclaimed songs among the Sahrawis are those about homeland and resistance. And even the Sahrawi cultural dance speaks about their resistance with dances such as the armed defense. They say that there is no way for an enemy to wipe out a civilization unless it decides to wipe itself out. Sahrawi culture and society are totally different from Moroccan culture and society. The difference is not only in the typical dress, dialect, or cuisine, but also in the most irrelevant details, such as typical names passed down throughout the generations. When the attempt to erase the Sahrawi identity by human crimes against humanity since 1975 failed, the occupation decided to erase it from within by sending thousands of Moroccans to the occupied areas of Western Sahara and teaching them the Sahrawi language, dress, and customs, so that they could gradually corrupt them. But the identity thief will always be a foreigner among the real owners of their identity. The fear of this solid culture has even led the Moroccan occupier to ban the use of typical names for newborn babies and to kill the camels just because they also symbolize culture. because they are also part of the Sahrawi identity. The Khaima has been strictly forbidden from Sahrawis in the occupied area since 2010. With the camp of Gdei Mizik, a protesting camp organized in the occupied Al Ayoun that is considered the match that ignited the Arab Spring. The cultural invasion doesn't end there, but the Moroccan occupation has also decided to erase all traces of Sahrawi history prior to the occupation in order to strengthen the theory that Western Sahara has always been theirs. Of course, the Sahrawis cannot stand idly by in the face of these attempts to erase their cultural identity, so they decided to hold on even tighter to their unshakable culture, which is a bridge between the past and the present, full of history and traditions, thanks to which the Sahrawis were able to resist colonialism and continue to resist occupation to this day. The Sahrawi woman, who, as I said before, is the strongest pillar of the Sahrawi society. The Sahrawi culture teaches us that our history is full of a resistant woman. Like, for example, the martyr Shaya Ahmed Zain, who died pregnant in the bombing of Draiga while she was working as a nurse, treating the war wounded. To this day, Sahrawi women fight for their freedom abroad, taking their message to the world, in the occupied zones and in the refugee camps, with their resistance in political posts and even on the front line of war. As I said, the Sahrawi woman has always been, is, and will continue to be a pillar in the Sahrawi struggle. For she is a strong woman, a brave fighter, a resistor, faithful on her beliefs and principles, who educates generations full of life, who fight for their culture, their identity, and their freedom.
دوركم توصلوا رسالة الشعب الصحراوي على أنكم رأيتوا شعب منظم، شعب ما يدور مشي ما هو أرض واستقلال، شي ثاني ما يدوروا، ما تديدوا السلام بالصوت بالأغنية بأي شيء، إحنا نكافحوا من أجل أرضنا.
Hello everyone, my name is Sheikh. I live under Moroccan occupation since the day I was born. Moroccan occupation invaded the Western Sahara in 1975, as you know, with the last two ladies. Moroccan is not the only one to blame here. Also, other countries pushing Morocco to occupy and keep occupying us. Our dream is get our independence from Morocco. That's why we still resisting. But today I will talk about different issue, which is natural resources in this area. We have a lot of riches in this area, which is renewable energy, which is related to wind and energy that's clean, and all the world full of this kind of energies. And also there is phosphate and other kind, which is fishing, which is a rich coast in Western Sahara, all along this coast. I am talking to you today from the ground, from Western Sahara, in occupied territories, especially Boujdour city, where a project located in this city. Two farms of wind well located on the north and in the south of this city, and the big complex of the solar energy. All these projects, we will talk about it during this report.
Last, I understand our desperate need for a green transition. We must save our planet. We are under occupation. I am going to show you the real face and the ugly face of this foreign company inside occupied territories. The energy produced from wind in the territory could constitute 47% of Morocco's total wind capacity by the year 2030, while its share of generated solar power may be then reach 32% of Morocco's total solar capacity. Renewable energy in the occupied territory of Western Sahara is problematic. Morocco is in desperate need for energy. By building a capacity in the territory holds under occupation, it is making itself dependent on energy projects in the occupied land and thus on maintaining its military presence and pushing forward. Nariva, the wind energy company that belongs to the holding company of the Moroccan monarchy, as long as the king himself earned enough money through the projects. Right now, I am in Bujdur, where some of these projects are taking place. The Sahrawi are nomadic, and our traditional way of living is distributed by the presence of this company. People are kicked out from their land, their tents are taken down, and their farms are destroyed in order to build windmills that we did not ask for. And I am here in Bujdur city, as I mentioned before, and I saw all this destruction of the ground, and they took the lands of nomadic people. People of Western Sahara have always spoken out against the European fisheries in their territory. According to Moroccan official statistics, a total of 136 tons of fish meal was exported from Morocco, including Western Sahara in 2022. Out of this, 46% was exported to Turkey. Other importing countries from Morocco were Greece, Spain, and Germany. On the other hand, Russian trawlers from been fishing in Western Sahara under the Russian-Moroccan Fisheries Agreement since 1992. Around 10 Russian trawlers in the coast of Western Sahara. To compare, the Sahrawi refugee camps that host half of the people of Western Sahara used to receive an annual 900 tons of canned fish in a humanitarian aid. When Sahrawi protests peacefully against these companies, we were beaten, jailed, all kind of torture practiced on us as a Sahrawi, a kind of discrimination. From this platform, we appeal to all companies to leave our country. We appeal to all governments to respect international law, because to this day, the UN consider Western Sahara to be a colony. We appeal to the European Union to respect its court decision and do not include Western Sahara in their agreements with Morocco. I asked you to respect our will and asked for our consent. As we mentioned before, our land is rich, even though we are under occupation. I am a university graduate. Like many Sahrawiyet, we were unemployed. And the only people these international companies hire are Moroccan settlers. My fellow Sahrawi students are sentenced many years in a prison because of their fights for self-determination and their right to benefit from their resources. Companies claim investments and prosperity in their territory. The reality could not be different. Sahrawi are jailed, tortured, women are raped. We are isolated from the world. These companies are here against our will and consonance. I want to send the message to these companies located in Boujdour city. We ask them kindly to leave our land. Western Sahara is not Morocco. We hope they receive this message because we suffer and the nomadic people and the Sahrawi suffer from their here because they are giving the chance to the Morocco to keep occupying us. What a shame to this company and a shame also to the UN that accepted this kind of actions. Hello again. I want just to explain to you a little bit about the situation here in occupied Boujdour city. The new project that's belonging to the King Mohammed VI. Also his company or his holding Mazin and the other company which is Narive in the ground. I am talking to you from the ground from Boujdour city as I mentioned to you before. Narive starts a new strategy with Enel, the Italian company, in the ground because Enel hiding their identity they hide their logo, they hide all that things. I hope to film this video from the ground, the turbines behind me from the farm, but you can't do this kind because they will arrest you, as I mentioned before, they will put you in jail. The same thing here in the port when they exploiting the fishes and they are smuggling our riches. You will not the problem if you are using a camera, they will arrest you. Also I want to talk about these advantages or about this farm that two farms located, one in Lemsid and one in Aftaisat, and a solar energy in the suburbs of the city. All this have disadvantages about the nomadic people. As I mentioned before, they took the land with any permission. They are destroying the structure of the ground because there are many animals living there, like camels, like goats. Don't want to enter the city because they didn't care about the policy of Morocco because they know that they are just as settlers. The chance now is for the settlers that they come and work with this company. They discriminated Sahrawi. As I mentioned before, I am a past graduated Sahrawi student speaking English, although there is a mini example of me, but no one achieved anything under occupation. That's why we are calling for self-determination since 1991, and no one care about our also this projects destroy the structure. We are not opposite the renewable energy, but not in these norms under occupation, because Morocco keep practiced all the torture against the Sahrawi. They send the people to jail. We are underground. No NGOs, as I mentioned before, no one can report about our situation. This is kind of greenwashing the occupation, and we hope if anyone interested in this issue can visit the link of Western Sahara Resources Watch. It's a great team who are related to this issue, and many details we will get from that platform.
Finally, I hope you understand more details about this situation, because Western Sahara is under occupation and still suffering. We ask all the people around the world to stop supporting Morocco as an occupier. We're suffering from different things. We are facing a catastrophe things, but no one care about us. We're still struggling and resisting until getting our independence. We believe in the peaceful process, but we feel in the same time that we are frustrated because no one care about us, no one come to visit us because Morocco put us under oppression, and no one can visit us. No NGOs can enter this area to report about this situation, but we are resisting. There is a people resisting about their rights, and thank you for attention, and hope to see you again, and thank you.
من يوم ترارات في الدنيا وانا لاجي من يوم ترارات في الدنيا وانا لاجي ومن يوم ترارات من يوم ترارات من يوم ترارات في الدنيا وانا لاجي من يوم ترارات في الدنيا وانا لاجي.
La canción de Lagi trata sobre el problema de los refugiados, toda la gente refugiada desde el Sahara Occidental a Palestina, a Mali. Yo vivo refugiada, yo nací en el refugio y crecí ahí y viví toda mi vida en campamento de refugiados. La música saharaui bebe de nuestras raíces árabes y a la vez nuestras raíces africanas. Nuestra cultura siempre ha sido transmitida de manera oral y para nosotros es muy importante la música porque así cuidamos bien nuestro legado cultural porque no está documentado.
تشت عن عزمي وإيماني شوف كم من روح انت تتمنى ملقى العيون اللي تحاني شوف كم من روح انت تتمنى ملقى العيون اللي تحاني شوفوا في السودان شعب لاجي لاجي.
La música es el arma más poderosa. Si mi voz puede dar cobertura a mi conflicto, pues para mí es un deber y sobre todo es una satisfacción. El conflicto del Sahara Occidental es mi conflicto puesto que es mi país. Y aunque yo vivo en Barcelona ahora mismo, mi familia sigue viviendo en los campamentos, mi pueblo sigue ahí, van ya 40 años que están sufriendo todo tipo de calamidades.
All right, so thank you everyone who has been with us up until now. We are now transitioning from the first segment of the Peace Wave to the second segment. This means we will stop the live stream and the recording and we will restart both of them. If you are joining us online via Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or LinkedIn, please just go to the World Beyond War pages and you can continue to follow the stream there. Just quickly, so everyone is aware, this next segment, the next 2 hours, will be in Spanish as the primary language. So hopefully you can join us and listen to some of the perspectives and music in Spanish. However, the segment following that, the following 2 hours after that, will be in English again. Then we switch to Spanish again, and we'll continue on with English for the majority of the rest of the wave. Solamente rápido en español para aclarar un poco, vamos a parar la grabación y la parte en vivo y van a reempezarlos de nuevo. Entonces, si estás viendo todo en línea, solo queda en las páginas de World Beyond War, puedes verlo aquí, ahí. Y vamos a empezar en un minuto. Gracias.